Good morning, everyone. Evening, afternoon, wherever you are at the time. We're continuing now with our pilgrimage to the Holy Land, which has really just turned into a long, wonderful, I hope you think it's wonderful, walk with Jesus. It's been really one of the most enjoyable things that I've done ever. I guess just to keep reliving this. As it happens, when this is being recorded, it's May 2021. Some of the underlying hostilities in that country have started exploding again. So our prayer today, let us also be that some of the spirit of the life of Christ and the life of all the great saints and masters of so many religions that have inspired that country can somehow inspire its present residents to find a way to live together. So let's pray together. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Master Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, dear friend and guide Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow to you all. Bless us that we may feel the living presence of Jesus within us. Make us instruments of that light into this world, and bless the Holy Land of Israel, that those souls who find themselves residents there now may be inspired by your presence to rise above all the chaos of the times that we live in, that the deep underlying power of the many great souls who have graced that land can triumph in light. Om, peace. Amen. I'm not really following the news. I don't follow the news as a rule because there's nothing I can do about it. But I have heard, you always manage to hear when things are happening. The first time I went to Israel, which was in, whenever it was, 2015, I think, I loved it, but I decided I couldn't go back because the tensions among the people there it was too hard on my heart. I couldn't live with it. And then a couple of years later, I had this sudden what I felt was a divine inspiration to go again. And I looked at it from the opposite side. I thought, where there is so much difficulty, then those of us who have some attunement to the light need to be present. I'm not talking politics. I'm just talking human suffering. And Divine Mother seems to want to teach her children through suffering. So the prayer that I always find helpful is, whatever it is that you want your children to learn, help them to learn it. Because that's the only way that progress will ever happen. One political system versus another, it's just a game of tennis. But if divine consciousness can come in, then everything can change. So the first song I would like to listen to today, play for you, is Swami Kriyananda singing the melody he put to Master's beautiful poem, God, God, God.
From the depths of slumber as I ascend the spiral stairways of wakefulness, I will whisper, whisper, God, God, God. Thou art the food, and when I break my fast of nightly separation from thee, I will taste thee and mentally say, God, God, God. I go, the spotlight of my mind will ever keep turning on thee. And in the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will be, God, God, God. When boisterous storms of trial shriek, and when worries howl at me, I will drown their noises loudly chanting, God, God, God. When my mind weaves dreams with threads of memories, on that magic cloth will I emboss, God, God, God. Every night in time of deepest sleep, when my peace dreams and calls, joy, joy, my joy comes singing evermore, God, God, God. In waking, eating, working, dreaming, sleeping, serving, meditating, chanting, divinely loving, my soul will constantly hum, unheard by any. God, God, God.
Well, my friends, that is the answer to everything, isn't it? My soul will constantly hum, unheard by any. God, God, God. It's really impossible for us, with our still limited ego-identified consciousness, to understand how great is the revolution of God consciousness. But we can aspire and step by step move toward it. Now, we've been following the life of Christ, place by place and story by story, and where we are now is we're in the last days of his life before his death, and then of course his resurrection. And now we are at the point. The last part we read was when Jesus sent his disciples to find this room that he told them about, where they could hold the Last Supper. When you go to Israel, they show you a room that they think was like the room that he was in, but Swamiji's feeling was, and others have concurred, that it doesn't necessarily feel like as holy. It doesn't have the same holy vibration that some places do. It's been reverenced. It's been a point of reverence for many years, but so I'm not showing any pictures because it just didn't have that, for me at least, either. I could have been prejudiced. Master said almost all the sites were authentic, including the site where Jesus ascended into heaven after the end of his period of appearing to his disciples, but we'll get there later. So, now we are talking, Jesus, here's where we are. Jesus has come into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. He's been teaching in the temple. He's been constantly in conflict with the priests who are the authority. Judas has gone and made a bargain with the spiritual authorities that for 30 pieces of silver he will lead them to where Jesus is, and he will identify him by kissing him on the cheek. And now it is, some say it's the Passover Seder. More likely it was simply, more possibly it was a supper that Jesus simply had the day before the Passover would have happened. There's different points of view on that, but it doesn't matter. They are sitting in the dining hall together. Jesus knows this is his last gathering with his disciples, because before the night is through, he will be arrested. And some of the disciples, Jesus has been telling them that this is the end, and I think some of the disciples understand it more clearly than others. But however, the foreknowledge was, everyone who is there, this is their last time with Jesus in the body, in this form. He comes to many disciples after his death in a resurrected form, but this is the end of the incarnation as it played itself out. So, when the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table, and he said to them, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it finds fulfillment in the kingdom of God. So these are, let's see, are we talking mostly from John? No, we're talking from all the Gospels together here. So then comes the very, now completely ritualized communion ceremony with the bread and the wine, which Jesus instituted at this last gathering with his disciples. So after taking the cup of wine, he gave thanks and said, Take this cup of wine, and divide it among you. For I tell you, I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes. The kingdom of God, some interpret it as death and going to heaven. But Jesus himself said the kingdom of God is within you. Why do you look here and there? So the way the esoteric explanation of this is that you will be with me again when you reach the same state of consciousness that I have. And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. So share the cup of wine, break the bread together. Do this in remembrance of me. There's so many beautiful, deeply meaning phrases in the Bible. Do this in remembrance of me was spoken specifically for the breaking of bread together, but it's really a life instruction. Everything that we do, we should do in remembrance of the divine within. In the same way, after the supper, he took the cake, kept saying, This is the new covenant. This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. So the bread becomes the body and the blood of Christ. Now, Master explained that. There was the limited definition of it, limited meaning that Jesus was about to give up his physical body. But Master said that the body of a master is actually the Om vibration, which is the presence of the divine everywhere. And the body of the master is not the physical body he lives in, but is the Om which permeates everything. And the blood, Master says, is the Christ consciousness, the knowledge that the divine and the individual are one reality. That's the Christ consciousness, is to know ourselves to be one with God. So to eat my body and drink my blood, which is what Jesus said earlier, is to become one with the Om and to attain Christ consciousness. So when we do this in remember of Christ, we're doing this in remembrance of the Christ consciousness within. And now from the Gospel of John, we have several wonderful stories. Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. The Father represents the Spirit beyond creation. So when he leaves this created world, he goes into the infinite Spirit. The Mother is the Om within creation. The Father is the power of Spirit beyond creation. These are not really gender references, but are talking about the yin-yang, the male-female principles of the universe. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. Oh, excuse me. I didn't mean to read that part. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Jesus got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Now bear this in mind. He has ridden triumphantly into the city of Jerusalem, and all the disciples were crying out, "Blessed is the Son of David." The priests were trying to tell Jesus to silence his disciples. He said, if these were silenced, the very stones would cry out. The power of God through Jesus has been manifested to all his disciples. In mysterious ways, he has brought them together to this banquet hall. He's telling them to eat this bread, break this bread, share this wine, and the bhav, the spiritual mood of the moment, must have been tremendous. So then Jesus gets up and he takes off his whatever his outer garment is. He wraps a towel around his waist, and he starts kneeling at the feet of all his disciples. I mean, this, if you were present, seemingly nothing like this has happened before, and these disciples are revering Jesus like the Messiah. And then all of a sudden, this Holy One, whom they consider to be one with God, is kneeling in front of them and doing the most menial task. When you think of the feet, you think also that, it was dusty. In all the pictures, they're wearing sandals and so on. So when you come into a place, your feet are dirty from the street. Sometimes people wash their feet as they come in because they don't want to bring that into the house. But even in the Indian tradition, the disciple puts their own forehead on the foot of the guru, the lowest point of the guru. The disciple puts the highest point of himself at the lowest point of the guru. And so now the master is kneeling at their feet. So Peter responds to this. When Jesus came to Peter, Jesus came to Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you will never wash my feet." Peter just couldn't accept such a reversal of roles from Jesus. Then Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." In other words, the Guru says, this is what I'm going to do. And if you're not going to obey me, then you're not truly my disciple. He doesn't spell that all out. Because then Peter replies, "Then, Lord," he said, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Now he must have said that in a way that made everyone laugh. At least that's how I always read it. Which is, if this is what you're going to do, Lord, then of course we're just going to go all the way. Here's my hands, here's my head. Whatever you say, this is what I will do. When he had finished washing their feet, Jesus put his clothes on and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I mean, I love also the way Jesus says, I am your Lord and teacher. You know, there's the way Master put it about himself. When someone praised his humility, Master said, how can there be humility when there is no consciousness of self? So when Jesus said, I am your Lord and teacher, he wasn't talking about Jesus, the egoic personality. He was talking about the Christ consciousness within him. And there was no self, there was no separate self that claimed that. I am your Lord and teacher. And as your Lord and teacher, I have washed your feet. For I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Now also the contrast that all of these disciples were aware of, that Jesus had been fighting against this whole time, was the priests of the temple who lorded their position over people and lived at a much higher level and expected people to kowtow to them and took many privileges because of their position. So Jesus is not just suggesting that humility is a good idea. He's setting completely the opposite example, because the orthodox spiritual authorities demanded that they be treated in a very different way. So now Jesus is showing them what a true messenger of God looks like. And it's the humblest of the humblest. So there was a great deal being taught here. After he had said this, Jesus was troubled in spirit and testified, very truly, I tell you, one of you is going to betray me. Now they're sitting at the table. There's 12 people in the room. These are the 12 apostles, the ones who have been following Jesus with great devotion all this time. And all of a sudden Jesus says, one of you is going to betray me. The disciples were very sad and began to say to him one after the other, surely you don't mean me, Lord? Now just imagine how sort of panicked you would get in that situation, because Jesus often made predictions about who they were, what would happen, and all of a sudden he's saying, one of you will betray me. So the disciples, naturally, the thought crossed their mind, do I have some propensity in me that is about to come to the surface? So you can imagine the consternation. One of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, that was John, who writes, whenever John speaks of himself, he calls himself the disciple whom Jesus loved. On Easter Sunday, I think I spoke a great deal about that. If you didn't hear that Easter sermon, it's well worth listening to. The point of it was that John defined himself not by how much he loved Jesus, but by how much Jesus loved him, which is to say, he was able to receive everything that Jesus had to give him. One of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, was reclining next to him. Peter motioned to this disciple and said, ask him which one he means. Now this is also a scene that I understand from having lived with Swami a great deal. And Swami actually talked about it when he was living with Master. Certain people sort of would have different relationships with Swamiji, and apparently also with Master, and here with Jesus, that they could take more liberties. They could get their questions answered. They were freer in the way they were able to relate to Jesus. So the 12 disciples that are there, who are all agitated, Peter says to John, ask him, take us out of our misery, find out which one we're talking about. Leaning back against Jesus, and all the paintings, and we'll show you some paintings later, they sort of have John like putting his head on Jesus' shoulder, even laying across Jesus' lap. So leaning back against Jesus, John asked him, Lord, who is it? Jesus answered, It is the one to whom I will give this piece of bread after I have dipped it in the dish." Then dipping the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. As soon as Jesus took the bread, Satan entered into him. Now, these are among the most famous scenes in the life of Jesus. All the disciples are there. This is going to be, Jesus is fully aware that before the night is ended, he will be arrested, and he will never sit in this way with his apostles again until he returns after death. But this is the end of this. So he breaks bread, he offers them wine, he kneels at their feet, he washes their feet. Then he announces that one of you will betray me, and now he demonstrates which one of them that's going to be. He dips the bread, he hands it to Judas. Now all of this is going on, but John puts it in words. I'm going to again refer to Swamiji. I've been in the presence of Swamiji on many different occasions when with very few words a great deal of communication was happening with certain people. At times it was even me, if we were continuing something that we'd already started, that it could just be referenced without other people even knowing exactly what we were talking about, because there would be background, but there would also be a lot of intuition. Swami sometimes would give slightly incomplete instructions and just tell you to use your intuition, just figure it out. You'll know what to do if you, and we did. I don't mean, he didn't tease us with that, but just in the course of things, intuition would happen, or telepathic communication. So he's able to do this with Judas without everybody sort of knowing exactly what was going on. But also, imagine, these men all knew each other really well, and they'd been working together, they thought, for the common good for a long time. And all of a sudden, Jesus has singled out this one who was going to betray him. And when he gave him that bread, Satan entered into him. Now, the other part of that that is so interesting to me is that Jesus essentially blessed him. I know what you're about to do here. Just like this. It's like the Guru gave him permission for him to carry out his karma. So Jesus then said to Judas, because now Satan has entered into him, "What you are about to do, do quickly." And once again, Jesus is telling Judas, I know what's going on. I know exactly what's going on. Now, that didn't serve Judas so well that night, because, in a very short period of time, even before Jesus is crucified, Judas takes his own life. But over the next many centuries and incarnations, and I was talking about this last session, while Judas worked his way through the karma, and Master said was liberated in the early 1900s. He was reincarnated as a disciple of Ramakrishna. Jesus sent him to Ramakrishna, and Judas became fully liberated at that point. But in the centuries that it took Jesus to expiate the karma, the fact that Jesus had acknowledged in advance that this is your destiny. Eventually, that must have been a profoundly liberating understanding for Judas. That which you are about to do, do quickly. But no one at the meal understood why Jesus said this to Judas. This tells you, too, that there were many different levels of communication happening. Since Judas had charge of the money, some thought Jesus was telling him to buy what was needed for the festival, or to give something to the poor. As soon as Judas had taken the bread, he went out. And then the Gospel said, and it was night. Is he telling merely that the sun had set, or was he telling that the darkness had really begun? Now, what's also really interesting here is that after Judas leaves, much of the really deep teaching of Jesus to his disciples happens. So you can imagine that Jesus was in one mood while Judas was still there, and that in another mood after Judas left. So now Jesus is talking to the 11 apostles. My children, I will be with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and just as I told the priest, so I tell you now, where I am going, you cannot come. Imagine how sad that made them. I'm about to leave you, and where I'm going, you can't come. Just heartbreaking in that moment. Also undoubtedly a little bewildering. So then Jesus says, a new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Now this was a little bit of a change, because the focus of the way the orthodoxy was being presented to them was that their relationship was with God the judge. And that was the focus. And now Jesus is washing their feet and telling them to love one another. And earlier when he would ask, what is the greatest commandment? He said to love God, heart, mind, and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. So Jesus is expanding this sense of where is God present. I mean, love your neighbor as yourself, for he is thyself. And this commandment is the same as the first commandment, he also says, because to love your neighbor is to love God. So this is orienting them in a new way. If you love one another, then people will know that you're my disciples, because this is something different than what the priests have been teaching you. Then Peter says, Lord, where are you going? And Jesus says again, where I am going, you cannot follow now, but you will follow later. Peter asked, Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. Then Jesus says to him, Satan has asked all of you, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat, but I have prayed for you, Peter, that your faith may not fail, and when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. And so then Peter says again, but Lord, I am ready to go with you to prison and to death. And so Jesus says, I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you will deny 3 times that you even know me. So now Jesus has sent one of them out. One of them is going to betray him. Peter, who's the most stalwart all the way through, has protested, Lord, what do you keep saying? I can't go with you. Of course I can go with you. What could possibly stop me? Prison or death? But Jesus knows Peter better than Peter knows himself. Fear is going to come into you. You're going to be sifted like wheat. The chaff and the grain are going to have to be separated. You have some karma that you're going to have to go through here. He said, you're going to say 3 times before the cock crows that you don't even know me. Now, Peter, of course, can't believe this, but this is precisely what happens with Peter. And once again, the fact that Jesus knew this was going to happen would be a comfort, a sustaining comfort for Peter when the karma does come to pass. Because he must also have felt the love of Christ at the same time. You're going to deny me, Peter. But it's not explained here. But Jesus didn't love Peter any less for that. And Peter must have felt that. So Jesus says, this is who you are. I see you. And I love and accept you the same. I know who you are. And these are the many stories in the Bible that help us to understand. The Lord sees us. There's no point in bravado. There's no point in pretending. He knows exactly who we are. And he loves us just the same. It's not even in spite of. It's the faults are the given. That's why he's here. He's here to liberate us from our faults. He's not here just to see that we've already accomplished it. He's come to help us become free. So then Jesus says, I will ask the Father, and he will give you another comforter to help you, to be with you forever, and the Spirit of truth. Now the comforter is the Om vibration. And what actually happens on the day of Pentecost, which is after Jesus is crucified, the comforter comes, and the comforter is the Om vibration. Comforter is also the feminine form, but it's not emphasized here. But when Master explains this, the comforter is the Divine Mother, the Om, the Divine Mother, the comforter. They're all the same experience of the Spirit. The world cannot accept him because it neither sees him nor knows him. He's speaking of himself. But you know him, the Son of God, for he lives with you and will be in you. And he's also speaking of the Comforter. The world doesn't love the power of Spirit within creation, but that Spirit lives in you. I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. Before long, the world will not see me anymore, but you will see me. He's speaking also of the resurrection, but more importantly, he's speaking of the living presence of the Spirit within them that will never leave them. Because I live, you also will live. On that day, you will realize that I am in my Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. Whoever has my commands and keeps them is the one who loves me. And the one who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I too will love them and show myself to them. Now you have to understand that Jesus is not here talking about earning the love of God. He's talking about making ourselves able to receive the love of God. And you see, there's a very big difference. It's not like God is withholding it. The Father is withholding his love, and we have to measure up. The love is always pouring out. And when we ourselves realize that, then we realize that which was always true. It was never withheld. It was we who turned our back on it. That is such a deep realization when you meditate upon it. Jesus says, I leave peace. I leave you my peace. I leave my peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. He's warning them because what's going to happen is so dramatic and so frightening and so unexpected. And then Jesus says, come now, let us go. And then they sang a hymn and then went out to the Mount of Olives. Okay. So why don't we look at a few pictures that are just artists' renditions of what the Last Supper looked like, so we can take all that we have sort of gathered from just listening to what the Bible says and take these artists' impression of what that experience was like. So here we have a more humble picture of the disciples gathered around Jesus, and Jesus is instructing them for the last time. The room that they have in Jerusalem that they present to you is where the Last Supper might have taken place, is an enormous hall. So this is an entirely different way of thinking of it. Let's take the next one. And this picture is by Heinrich Hoffmann. It's one of his drawings. And this is his impression of how Jesus offered them the communion wine. And this is much more likely than that they would be formally sitting around a table if one is going to feel what it might be like, where Jesus, here, do this in remembrance of me. It is quite likely that they were gathered in this way and had not yet gone to the table. See the disciples, how eagerly the ones are kneeling, looking up to him. It's just, if I had been there, if you had been there, where would we be and what would we be feeling? And what a profound impression that moment would make. Edgar Casey in his life reading for many people, not many, but some, spoke of an incarnation in which was contemporaneous with Jesus. And he would sometimes say, you know, Jesus walked by and looked you in the eyes. You know, you touched his hand. He blessed you. And then Casey, reading the lives, the current incarnations of people in the 1940s and 50s, said that one contact with Jesus has been the defining reality in every incarnation you've had since. The Indian saying is, one moment in the company of a saint will be your raft over the ocean of delusion. And where that comes from is that when we have an experience of divine awakening, everything else is so unimportant compared to the impression that that awakening makes on our soul. And it becomes the touchstone for all our experiences ever after, and a longing, whether it's brought to the conscious mind or not, a compelling, the heart is compelled to try to return again to that moment of awakening. So here we have ourselves imagined being there, receiving that touch from Jesus, whether you know, in this moment, or in all the moments that might have come before, or the moment that is available to us even now. So now let's look again at another, and we have John leaning against Jesus there. That it seems an awkward position, but that's how he's often presented by the artist. And you notice that one of the apostles does not have a halo, does not have an aura of light. And so that would be, of course, the rendition of Jesus, close enough to receive the bread, and all the disciples together with him. Now let's go to this is the painting by Leonardo da Vinci, the most famous, one of the most famous of the Last Supper paintings. And here you have the disciples agitated for many reasons. They're not all looking at Jesus. Who knows what they're asking or thinking. Maybe this is when Jesus said, one of you will betray me. Or maybe he's saying, where I'm going, you can't come with me. Maybe he's just told Peter that 3 times Peter would deny him. All of those experiences running through them and running through us. Now here's let's do one more. This is more fanciful, with people from modern times looking in. But it's also, it's beautiful. Just beautiful to see them all there with Jesus. And then one last one, another classic picture, with all of them with auras except one. Now while we look at this picture and feel the experience of what we've just read from the Gospels, let's listen to Swamiji leading a group in the chant, I want only thee.
I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. Voglio solo te, Dio te, solo te. 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 Voglio solo te, Dio te, solo te.
want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I 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 want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. Voglio solo te, Dio, te, solo te. 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 I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. 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 Voglio solo te, Dio, te, solo te. 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 I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. 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 Voglio solo te, Dio, te, solo te. 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 I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. 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 I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee.
So now, the gathering in the hall is done, and they go across to the Mount of Olives, to the Garden of Gethsemane. When we look at pictures again, I mean, this is a short walk across the Kidron Valley. We can, I'll show it to you again in a moment. So here's what it says in the Bible about this. When Jesus had finished praying, he left with his disciples and crossed the Kidron Valley. On the other side there was a garden, and he and his disciples went into it. They went to a place called Gethsemane. Now this is a place where they often went, and there was a hillside. Let me just think about this for just a moment. Well, I'll explain it to you when we get to the pictures. Sometimes, as I mentioned to you, this is a combined gospel, so the lines repeat. It sometimes startles me when it does, but I know that they do. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." he took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. "Stay here and keep watch." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but thine be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. That's a modernization sometimes. It says simply his sweat was drops of blood falling to the ground. When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples to whom he had said, "Stay here and keep watch," he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Couldn't you keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping, because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." Now, so much has been written and said about this, that Jesus is going, asking his disciples to stay awake with him, and none of them are able to do it. Again, imagine how that felt to them afterwards when they realized. But even Jesus again says, "The spirit is willing. You mean well. You are my disciples. You are my children. But you have a limit. And you've reached that." Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the garden, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They were carrying torches and lanterns and weapons. Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said. And Judas the traitor was standing there with them. When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they said. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with the cohort. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard." He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus asked him, "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" Going at once to Jesus, Judas says, "Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus then said again, "I told you, I am he. If you are looking for me, then let these men go." This happened so that the words he had spoken would be fulfilled. "I have not lost one of them that you gave me." It's hard to imagine a more extraordinary scene, is it? And there's that wonderful scene where the cohort is coming. Jesus knows everything that's about to happen. He goes out to meet them. He volunteers who he is. He steps toward them. It's that step toward him, toward his destiny, that has the most tremendous power. Our destiny is going to come to us if it's God's will. And let us, instead of shrinking from it and hoping to be overlooked, let us follow the example of Jesus and step into it, because thy will be done. And there's also that wonderful part. When Jesus stepped forward, the armed guard fell over to the ground. The force of the power of his presence knocked them to the ground. The men seized Jesus and arrested him. When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, "Lord, should we strike with our swords?" Then Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The man's name was Malchus. So here's Peter, he's proving himself. This is an armed guard. He's vastly outnumbered. Peter has a sword. He goes toward this man who is about to arrest Jesus, and he strikes him. He strikes him hard enough to slice the ear off his head. So Peter is true to his vow. He's not going to let Jesus be taken without a fight. But then Jesus says, "Put your sword back in its place. For all who draw the sword will die by the sword." Then he speaks from a different level. And he says to Peter, and I imagine he said it kindly, "Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled? They say it must happen this way." And he touched the man's ear and healed him. So not only did Jesus not allow his disciples to fight, but he rectified the reckless action of Peter and healed the man, just picked it up. This is these people are there to take him away to crucify him, and Jesus heals him first. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders who had come for him, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come with your swords and clubs?" Now, you have to realize Jesus was absolutely fearless in the face of this. So this is not a whine, and this is not an angry remark. I mean, you have to think of it almost as that it was a humorous remark. "Am I leading a rebellion that you have to come for me with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts, and you did not lay a hand on me. But this is your hour," he says, "when darkness reigns." So Jesus is continuing to teach them. He's chastising them. You could have arrested me. What is all this with clubs and swords and armed guards? You could have taken me at any point. And he's pointing out to them how foolish they are. But this is your hour, meaning that the Lord has given you power over me. This is when darkness reigns. Then the detachments of soldiers with its commander and the officials arrested Jesus. Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. When the guard actually put their hands on Jesus to arrest him, the apostles panicked. A young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus. When they seized him, he fled naked, leaving his garment behind. So one of those who was there, the guards grabbed him by his clothes, and he slipped out of his clothes. And without any clothes on, he ran away. But what this describes to you is this was Satan's hour, and darkness reigned. And in that moment, now the disciples all recovered, but in that moment they panicked, which is also, warning us, telling us, we have to always be humble because of what may happen. So I have some wonderful pictures now of this particular place and the things that happened here. There's some lovely things to see. So let's look at the pictures of Gethsemane. So this is to give us an orientation. We're standing probably just outside the wall of the city of Jerusalem, the place where the Last Supper was held is, near where we're standing. Of course, this is all built up now, and you can see all the tourist buses lined up. this is the Kidron Valley that we're looking down. So you can see it wasn't that long a distance that the disciples walked. They walked across the Kidron Valley. Now that big temple that you see with the arches, that's called it's called the Church of All Nations. It was a combined effort by many nations, because elsewhere in the gospel it says, he's come as a messenger to all nations. Now we've been here before. If you look slightly to the right, you'll see the teardrop temple, which was right as we face it, which is where Jesus wept. He looked back at Jerusalem and wept for Jerusalem. But where that big church is, which is where we're going, is what they call the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus often went with his disciples. So now let's get closer. We'll just look at this church. It's a remarkable church. This whole hill is the Mount of Olives. And when we were walking down from Palm Sunday, we walked right past this. It was off to the right from the top of the hill, and that's where the church is, where Jesus also met with his disciples and taught them to pray, "Our Father who art in heaven." So now here's this glorious church, and it's really quite a beautiful church. You can see it here with these wonderful many arched domes, which we'll see from the inside in a moment. Let's look closer at the mosaic, just at the front entrance here. And then we can go up closer to that mosaic, which is just a glorious piece of art that's worth looking at. We can, I think, a little closer to see the image of Jesus there. I don't know what the meaning of the reindeer or the pieces, all of that can be explained if you just research it. But now we're going to go away from the church for the moment, a short distance away, like you might say a city block away. You go down into a valley again, and there was a natural cave in the hillside here. And the tradition is, let's go another step closer to there. That's the doorway into it. And then let's go all the way inside into this grotto, which is still just a grotto. And it is believed that this may have been the place where the disciples were waiting for Jesus, because this is a cave, seemingly, by tradition, where he often went and was with his disciples. So the church, which is just, a 2-minute walk from here, is built over, it's through an olive grove, and then it's built over the rock where Jesus was said to have prayed, and we'll see all that in a moment. So this grotto has just magnificent vibrations here. And if you go on pilgrimage, you can sit in this grotto where Jesus met countless times with his disciples. And also, it is believed on that last night, this is where they were. So now we're going to walk back to the church. And to walk back to the church, you can see it there. We're walking through this olive grove. Now these olive trees are hundreds and hundreds of years old. They're believed not to actually have been standing when Jesus was here, but they are the offspring of those olive trees. So let's just 2 more pictures of these just magnificent creatures who have been responsible for holding the vibration and of this place, who have witnessed many great spiritual events. So let's look again. There's another picture of more olive trees. When these are living beings, and this is a community of these trees, and their collective history carries the power of Christ with them. Now let's go inside the church. It's really a beautiful church, just exquisitely beautiful. And there's 3 altar areas, and there's 3 mosaics. One is Judas kissing Jesus. One is Jesus being arrested, and the other is Jesus praying that night. So let's go. You can see a little closer. And you can see Jesus is always depicted as leaning against a rock. And that rock is actually, we'll look at it more closely in just a moment, but that rock is actually right in front of this altar. So now let's look at the side altar, which is, you can see it a little bit. This is Judas giving Jesus that kiss. And then on the other side is the soldiers taking a hold of Jesus, about to take a hold of him. No, excuse me, the soldiers falling down when Jesus stepped toward them. Now, this is, you see Jesus resting on the rock, and what you see within that little picket fence is the rock. And it's possible when you go to visit that, you can't step over that little picket, but you can kneel next to it and you can touch it. And so you're there with this depiction of Christ by himself, leaning against this rock, and then you can touch that rock yourself. I'll show you. Let's take the next picture. This was our pilgrimage, just to give you a sense of proportion. And it is, it really has the power of Gethsemane. These are, you can feel what Jesus was experiencing there. Now this is just the rock itself. And while we contemplate this extraordinary moment, Swamiji has written a song. It's an instrumental, and it's dedicated to the Garden of Gethsemane in this event. So let's listen to the melody and contemplate the life of Christ in this moment. Now this section is just artist's conception of what this experience was. So Jesus tells his disciples, watch with me. He goes a little distance away, kneels by the rock, and in the gospel, as you remember, it said, an angel appeared to Jesus and strengthened him, which is a way, I think, of saying that Jesus entered into the world beyond this one, and drew his strength from his attunement with the divine. So the next picture, this is Fra Angelico's version of this. This also has some of Jesus's women disciples also praying for him. So is this a vision that there were more than just the 12 apostles with him? We don't really know. So we have Jesus praying. We have John and Peter and James falling asleep. And then somewhere we have the women disciples also praying for him. So let's look at the next picture. This is just Jesus and the angel kneeling on that rock. The rock, the very rock, let's say. The very rock where we were a moment ago. Master said that wherever a master is, his vibrations remain there forever. And so that's the premise of pilgrimage, is that the vibrations never leave. So here's another of Jesus praying. This is a painting by Hoffman. I think it's been colorized by others, but it's a beautiful feeling about it. There's a certain, I don't know, I feel like Jesus is at peace. I mean, he's intent, but he's just stretched out on the rock. He's leaning forward. He's accepting what comes. There's a closer version of Jesus praying. I love the way his hands are folded. Just such a beautiful touch. And then, this is a mosaic that's actually in France, at Lourdes. And this is the picture of Jesus with such intensity that blood was running through his skin. And Swami's, the other song that Swami wrote, the Latin words, the Latin words around say, thy will be done. There's an exact translation, but that's what it means. Thy will be done. So now let's, I was going to say enjoy, but let's contemplate this picture while we listen to Swami sing twice, please. From the oratorio, Let This Cup Pass From Me.
from me. Let my heart not know so much pain. Must thou love thou best thy children, ever suffer such disdain? Would that I might reveal thy greatness, nevertheless thy will be done. Lord, let this cup pass from me. Let my heart not know so much pain. Must thou love thou best thy children, ever suffer such disdain? Would that I might reveal thy greatness, nevertheless thy will be done.
So we have just a few more paintings, pictures here. This is of the moment of Jesus being arrested. This is Fra Angelico, who actually painted this scene. Judas leaning over to kiss Jesus, one of the disciples scuffling off to the right, trying to prevent it. Let's take another picture of this. Somehow this black and white picture captures the chaos of it even more deeply. See how Jesus is completely not resisting? Look at him. Jesus has both arms wide open. You know, he's just, that's kind of the way you stand when whatever comes, you're just welcoming it. And so Judas leans in and carries out his destiny. Then there's one more here of just, this I presented simply because of the chaos that you feel in this picture. And you can sort of imagine it as an astral moment when, you know, with anger and with arms, these men place their hands on this great saint. And just feel the clash of light and dark in this picture. That's what this is. This is when two realities are crashing together. This is your hour, Jesus says. Night has come, and the darkness is closing in around.
I have a love who's far away, far away, far away. I have a love who's far away, farther away than the stars. Mother, you've stolen my heart away, heart away, heart away. Father, you've stolen my heart away, farther away than the stars. Keep me not bound here, teach me to fly, far from earth's madness, free ere I die. Keep me not bound, mar, teach me to fly, farther away than the stars. There's nothing here nearly so dear, nearly so dear, nearly so dear. Mother, I know your love's ever near, though farther away than the stars.